up, people? Another Sooners Intel channel where you get all of the, best news, best rumors, best analysis, best this, whatever. Hey, look, Horns Down Podcast, Sooners 360, Hall of Fame College Football Podcast with Jason and the coach. Combined, this is what you get. Definitely enjoy doing the show with these two right here. It's never a dull moment. Always some good stuff on and off the screen. No, Diddy. But, guys, we have some recruiting stuff to definitely talk about. So, Chris Mason, the floor is yours. And like the people about some of the kids that we've got, some of the verbals that are definitely coming up as far as, announcement dates, and obviously the never ending O'Neal Bentley saga. So, Chris Mason, the floor is yours.
So big weekend for OU, as we previewed last Friday. We kind of gave you everything we needed to about the big weekend coming up. OU had nailed the sort of X's and O's of the recruiting weekend. Everybody showed up. The kids, and the feedback has been extremely positive. And obviously 3 commitments after the weekend, I think, speaks to that. But even the kids that aren't committed yet or are still open, their interviews with the various recruiting sites were very positive. OU, I'll give Brent Venables a lot of credit. He executes these official visits very well. And in the past, Lincoln Riley and even Bob, to a certain degree, there were some spotty weekends and some spotty execution kind of going on. But Brent, obviously all the additional staff members, I think, helps. Like, for instance, you've got at linebacker, you've got Coach Dreiling, but you've also got Skansky, the Clemson linebacker, and you've also got the guy they brought in from Clemson, who's handling the Cheetahs. So you've got multiple people around. Even Bill now has some help with Kevin Wilson. So when he's got 3 or 4 offensive linemen in, he's now got Kevin Wilson who can help with that message. So from an execution standpoint, OU did a great job. So we'll just start with the commitments because that's the easiest part of this. So as I kind of told you guys on Friday when we met, I thought there was a high chance Matthew Nelson was going to commit to OU, and he did. The defensive end from Bryant, Arkansas. Ever since OU's got involved with him heavily, now the recruiting ranking services, 3 of the 4 have now evaluated him, and they all think he's a high 3-star, the Rivals 5.7 score. So, and I think there's a good chance with a positive senior year, now that everybody knows he's an OU recruit, right? He'll get evaluated after his senior year. This is kind of the problem with the services, as we've been talking about a little bit. I think with a good senior year, and he's going to be playing with Ja'Cory Smith, who the services will also want to evaluate. So there's a very good chance that his film, Skalski is probably the Brett. Yeah, that's right, Sooner in Texas, Skalski. There's a good chance that I think he could be a low 4-star. It's very easy. His frame, his ability, it's all there. So obviously I like he sort of embodies the Nagy style of recruiting, right? Find someone slightly under the radar who has NFL measurables, which I'm sadly going to use multiple times in talking about the verbals coming up. He has NFL measurables. Bring him in, let the staff develop him. He's got a good value from a salary cap number. We'll just use that as a broad term. However, NIL and this revenue thing shakes out. We'll see what happens there. But from a salary cap number, he's got a good number. And you can let him sit and develop for 2 years. And by that point, he might be 6'5", 245, running like a 4.6. I mean, he has the track athleticism and explosion. He has the speed. It's all about developing it and, Jerry Schmidt putting the weight on in a correct manner and Chavis coaching him up. So I think as gambles go, this is a long shot that could pay off big for OU. Let's just kind of put it that way. The second commit, also one I predicted kind of last Friday, saying I think kind of close. Noah Best, the offensive lineman from Midlothian, Texas. He's basically been an OU lean for about 12 months. He's 6'4", 290. And as Gabe Eichert said on their podcast when he met him, he said Noah is a big, lean offensive lineman, and and Eichert's like, I love offensive linemen who look like that, because if he's lean at 290, that means Jerry Schmidt can put weight on him, and he'll be 6'4", 320 at offensive guard. He plays tackle for Midlothian. His tackle highlights are very good. He'll move inside the guard, so he would have been, if he's a good tackle, you move him inside, and he could be a great guard with his athleticism. Very physical, loves shoving guys 10 yards downfield and pancaking them. I think this is a big pickup. Again, he's a low 4-star by Rivals. The other two services, 247 and On3, have him as a high 3. I think there's a chance he's probably just a composite 4 by the time his senior year is kind of over and evaluated. Now, while I'm giving myself a pat on the back for predicting those two guys would be Sooners, and they could pull the trigger, I got to admit, I did not have Derek Johnson II from Murrieta, California, verbally to OU. I thought that was a long shot, and I didn't think that was going to happen. But predictably, when I was at the movies, OU got a verbal commitment. That's kind of the way things seem to work for me during the summer. And Derek committed on Tuesday afternoon. I went back and I hadn't done a deep dive on his film because I didn't think I thought that visit might not happen. I didn't think OU was going to get him. You go back and you look at his film, there's so much to like. When you factor in his elite NFL measurables at cornerback, he's 6'1", maybe 6'2". He's 170 pounds, but he can easily add 10, 15 pounds of weight onto his frame. He's excellent in coverage. He plays wide receiver for his high school. His wide receiver highlights are also very productive. I love cornerbacks that also play wide receiver for their high schools, because as OU fans have seen over the years, dropped interceptions or dropped opportunities. So you like a receiver, a guy who has receiver skills, has ball skills, understands how to high point passes. And from that aspect, he's also very physical, blows up wide receiver screens, and things like that. So I think it's a really good addition to OU, a little bit of a surprise, but I think he's a high 3-star again by most of the services. Probably going to have a hard time bumping up beyond that unless he doesn't have like a track speed. He doesn't look slow on film at all. He looks fast. There's a play where he tackles a guy, a running back breaks through the line, and he's on the opposite side of the field. He chases that guy down and tackles him before he can get in the end zone, saving the touchdown. He looks fast in that. So he might have a hard time moving up to a 4-star level, but I think when you factor in his measurables and his film, I think it's a very good addition at cornerback. Probably, can you ever have too many big corners in the SEC? Guys who are 6'1", 6'2", and can handle the seemingly nonstop army of massive wideouts that the SEC seems to have. Every SEC team seems to have a 6'4", 215-pound guy. So having a cornerback who could be 6'2", 190 pounds to match up with them seems like the best solution there, other than just, blitzing the quarterback and never letting him throw a pass. But, so I really like these 3 additions. I think Nelson is probably the red shirt, give him a year kind of timeline. I think Best is probably enroll early, maybe red shirt, and then help. I think he's that good. And I think, Derek Johnson is, if he enrolls early, I think it just depends where OU's cornerback room is. I think he could help very early. He's got good technique and good size. So what do you guys think of the 3 verbals? Do you have any questions about them?
I like the Derek Johnson kid. I think his film pops, definitely pops. The Matthew Nelson kid, I definitely agree with your take on that. What I will say about him, I I would like to see more explosiveness. That's something that me and Unc have kind of have talked about. Just kind of seeing more twitch, more explosiveness, different things like that. But when I do watch his film, I see a guy that's very, he's fundamentally sound, he's technical, and his hands are really good. I don't think that's going to be an issue for somebody like Chavis, to have to worry about with him as far as having violent hands, different things like that. He has technique. When you see for OU fans, just to try to give a kind of like an example, go to the Cincinnati game when PJ was out there, and you saw that move that he put on that kid, swiped his hands down, got around, basically got to the quarterback. That's the type of film that you see with a Matthew Nelson. I think it's just some of those other things that they're going to teach him and installing him and everything, but working on a base, I think he'll definitely be fine. So that's my take on those two kids, at least. Jason, you got anything?
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I would go up here and ask the question that our boy just asked here. Sergeant Pickles.
Yep.
How does Venables not lock down a blue chip kid from Norman? Happy to have him in Seattle. Look crazy.
Well, it's very simple. Jim Nagy, when he came in, he reevaluated OU's wide receiver
I was fixing
offers.
to say, but I wanted you to answer it. Yeah.
Wide receiver board, and he decided that for his height, speed, weight he can put on combo, Jim Nagy doesn't think that Mason James can be successful in the SEC. I don't know that he's right, but we did watch last year smaller OU wide receivers in the SEC, and I've mentioned this before, get manhandled by bigger, more athletic cornerbacks. And the refs just don't call pass interference like they do in the Big 12. It's not as wide open from that regard. So from that standpoint, OU basically 8 weeks backed off Mason James. You notice he hasn't had an official visit scheduled for OU. Emmett Jones hasn't been doing in-homes with him. So OU moved off and went in other directions at wide receiver. And you look at the 3 wide receivers they brought in this weekend. Jaden Petit, 6'4", 205 pounds. Davion Gross is 6'3", 190 pounds. And even the speedster guy they brought in is 6'1", 180, and he has track elite speed. Mason James doesn't have elite track speed. At least that's the testing numbers that OU has on him. He's an excellent wide receiver, excellent prospect. I think he'll do very well at Washington. But OU's going another direction. And to be honest, the wide receiver, everyone's like, oh, it's this. Why did we not do this? The high school wide receiver talent pool is so deep that, it's hard for me to get really worked up over OU moving on from a wide receiver and focusing elsewhere on other wide receivers. So, Mason James is 5'10", 175 pounds. The 3 guys I just said they brought in for a visit, their average is 6'2", 190. Simple math. Again, they're looking for measurables, looking for size, looking for things that fit the offense. Also, we did have an offensive coordinator change as well. So OU just decided they wanted to focus on different talents other than Mason James. It's not an in-state thing. OU focused on Elijah Thomas, and as we all saw with him, like tomahawk dunking at Lloyd Noble in the videos that went viral this week for OU fans, they're going to focus on athletes like that, and they're going to focus on bigger athletes, athletes.
He's definitely doesn't fit the bill of what they've been recruiting. So
they have offered some smaller wide receivers for 2027, but every one of them has like a 4.4 or a
or like a 10.2 or something like that.
10.3. So they're just if you're not a burner, be a bigger receiver. So, that's the issue on Mason James. I'm happy he's going to Washington. I'm happy he's not going to Texas. So,
me too.
I know he's not facing scrubs in the Big Ten, but the Big Ten top to bottom doesn't have the kind of defensive cornerbacks and it doesn't have the defenses top to bottom in the passing game that the SEC has. Doesn't have the pass rushers, doesn't have the cornerbacks. That's just a fact. NFL draft picks and all that bear that out. So, we'll see how it works out for Mason. Wish him all the best. He's a great kid. I think he'll have a big senior year with Nash Henry throwing him the ball, his new quarterback at Norman North. But this is it's John Hoover posted on Twitter, OU loses, big recruiting loss, Mason James to Washington, and that's just clickbait. That's just not what happened. That's just not how this worked out. If you've been listening to this podcast, this isn't news at all. We've been talking about this for weeks. So, same thing with OU moving on from Caden Jones. They didn't think he was an elite 3-down back, and OSU ponied up the money to get him, and OU's like, okay, go ahead. So it's Nagy's being more selective about that. You can see that in the guys being brought in as again, Gabe Eichert said on their podcast when because he met all the guys. He's like, I don't know what Jim Nagy's doing, but they're the guys on the line and the guys on the defense and offensive lines. I like the big bodies he's bringing in. So, yeah, John Hoover is his bitterness with Bob continues in his coverage with OU. It's kind of funny. Yeah, I mean, Jim Nagy, the majority of this class is a Brent class, right? Mm-hmm. These are the players Brent wants and Brent has evaluated and recruited. Nagy modified things a little bit, dropped some names, added some more names, but for the most part, these are the players Brent wanted.
And I think it's one of those things where you're going to have a chance to have a really good class with these kids to add on. You'll be replacing certain parts and stuff like that of this team. If everything goes well, there should be a bunch of guys that possibly get drafted next year. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where you kind of just have to wait and see just how everything is going to go, but definitely excited about some of the kids that we are getting. And, one thing that I think, Chris Mason, that you talked about last week, and Jason, I know you and I have talked about this, with Ty and other people as well. Look at the average, star rating of these kids. Look at the average, scores that these kids are getting. And Chris Mason, that coincides with what you said last week about the ranking services, as we have some of our Texas brethren in here in the Bevo guy. The rankings.
How many times did they go ahead? Sorry. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, the rankings are off. I mean, these kids are ranked 4 stars on this service, 4 stars on that service. And, with the camps, all types of stuff that goes into it, it factors into. And I think another thing as well is, I have some friends. I have a friend that disagrees with me. He definitely knows who he is when I say this, but, a 3-star in Oklahoma is not necessarily the same thing as a 3-star in Florida or Georgia. And you got to look at the competition that these kids are playing at. And so a kid may not go to camps, or he may not rank all the way up because another kid is going to camps and it has more offers than him at his position in Georgia. And, that kid that we're picking up may be a 3-star, but you're also looking at him and saying, okay, he's the 5th player at his position in his state, but he's, the 40th player in the nation. So how is this a 3-star rating? It's just one of those things where you kind of got to look at those composite scores and different things like that to really get kind of a real look at the kids. But again,
you kind of realize that they don't give a shit about those scores either.
Yeah. And one thing that I will say that I do believe in, and the staff has shown me, this staff has a bunch of great developers on the staff. They've shown that. It's just a simple fact of we have to make better, game management decisions, different things like that. The list can go on. But you can't deny the fact that they've been able to identify talent and develop talent in a short amount of time that they've been here, because there's been some kids that have came here and have produced for us in big ways. And we could go on and on about those kids. So to me, I think that's one thing you can't knock the staff. So I'm excited about this class. I think it's only going to get better. And I think senior film is going to, I think there's a bunch of these kids who are on the verge of either solidifying their 4-star status or on the verge of doing bigger things than that. Jason?
Yeah, listen, I think you either have to trust the guy or you don't. You know what I mean? And so, and at this point, you're going to have to look. We've been critical of some of the things. I think that it's important to retain some of these guys, because I think that when it comes to David Stone, I don't think that they missed that one, right? And I think that you need to give him some time to become what he needs to be, plus the depth that we were talking about. In the end, moving forward, we know these guys are in charge of the room. And if you hadn't looked at the thumbnail that we put up there for this video, they got 67 years worth of NFL scouting in the room now. They know what the hell they're looking at, along with a lot of other. I mean, let's see. It's
and I mean, just to kind of piggyback off your point, and then Chris Mason, we'll talk about those running backs that are going to be on campus
60.
and other kids that are coming up too. But
yeah.
Jason, the biggest thing that we've been saying it for the longest on the show for the last couple of weeks, as we've been talking about NIL. If you do not believe or you do not see it yet, you may be blind or you may not be paying attention to this fact right here. I'm about to drop.
Yeah.
College football is moving to an NFL model. So what that means is that we're going to start getting away from rankings per se, and we're going to get into that category of evaluations, because evaluations are going to be the most crucial part of this whole NIL process as we navigate it, simply because when you're talking about just direct pay from the school, these evaluations are going to be more NFL-like than anything. So when you see the Belichicks for however long he stays in college football, but when you see the Belichicks, you see the Ron Riveras, you see the Nagys, guys like that are coming in and they're bringing these GMs in to college football, that's going to be a model. There's going to be select schools who still go out there and try to act like, okay, well, we can just, run it up. Texas Tech, for example, right? But when you really get to the heart of what's going on at the premier programs, the Blue Bloods and different things like that, going to an NFL model is going to give you a more realistic expectation of how that money is going to be used as far as the direct pay, not necessarily the NIL with NIL deals, outside funding or whatever, however we want to call it. But when you look at how these GMs and these different, personalities are coming into college football, it's going to be heavily influenced by the NFL game not NFL game, but the NFL, leadership or owners. So I think that's something that people need to start, realizing, because we're going to start getting away from stars. And that is not by any means saying that, yeah, you don't want to go get a kid that 5-star potential and all the rest of that. But I just think that that's a rude awakening for some people that people are not talking about enough.
I think they're going to go after the guys that everybody knows are 5-star guys and 4-star guys and top 100 or whatever. But that's not the only thing they're looking at. They want to go and they're looking at a measurable. And let's just kind of piggyback on what you're saying. 60 college football years of scouting, 36 bowl games, 18 bowl wins, 67 years of NFL scouting, 9 Super Bowl appearances with 5 wins. They know what they're doing when it comes to evaluating talent. This Oklahoma staff knows what it's doing when it comes to making getting the most out of your talent. Development. It's going to, look, and in the end, I would tell you that it's not going to take long that these recruiting services they're going to start doing what they've already done with certain coaches, to where I did that. I'm telling you, I did that video. It's been 2 years now after the 24 class. Yeah. It's not taking a huge risk. It's not taking a huge risk, Sooner Cowboy. It is not. Because you know that these guys know what the hell they're doing. And how is it taking a huge risk? Think about talking about the defensive lineman that we got a week ago. Are you going to tell me that guy doesn't deserve to be way higher up than where he was at on that 3-star? You got to be shitting me. Watch his film. Just watch his film. And he comes from the speed state. What are we talking about? There's guys that slip through the cracks. And what I was just saying was the video that I did 2 years ago, look at how many people they didn't have rated right at all. Jaden Jackson, one of them. I'm way down the list. Eli Bowen, low 3-star. He wasn't in the top 500. Both of them All-Americans.
Yeah,
Powers was in the top 100, but Boganowski wasn't. You know what I mean? We can sit here and do this all day. We can do this all day, but in the end, they know what they're. And you know what? It's a risk. If you can say it was okay, yeah. All the big schools wanted him.
So you're just proving that point, Benji.
Exactly.
You just proved that point. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Texas fan. We appreciate it. So.
Yeah.
You just look at Matthew Nelson, like unranked completely, right? And then OU offers him, brings him on campus, and then the services look at their film and say, "Oh, yeah, he's pretty good. He's like a top 400, top 500."
He's more day one ready than, I wouldn't say he's necessarily better, but he's more day one ready than Stone was.
So, yeah, it's how it works. So OU took a recruiting hit. They lost Tavion Branch to Rutgers. I don't know if that was just simply a money thing or a distance thing. I liked him a lot. I talked him up. I'm not going to deny that wasn't a blow. I thought he was heading to OU. Everybody else thought he was heading to OU. And then the morning of, all of a sudden he switched location. So I don't know if it's distance.
That's the question I was going to ask you, though. Is that not obviously, though, he came to Oklahoma, he got a certain offer, he goes back there, they go over the top at Rutgers. Clearly, Nagy didn't think he was worth that number. Because you're going to say you think he's going to choose Rutgers over Oklahoma otherwise? I don't.
No, but maybe the money, and then, okay, it's closer to home. That kicks in too. It kicks in every once in a while, right? Sometimes distance matters. Sometimes it doesn't. It's hard to tell. It is a big distance difference. So, they lost Tavion Branch. I thought they had a good chance at him. Maybe they roll back to him this fall. Always a chance you can do that. It's just a verbal commitment to Rutgers. Rutgers picks up good kids in the summer and loses good kids in the fall. That's sort of what happens to them as people realize that Greg Schiano does a good job evaluating and does a good job with, does a good job scouting kids in the Northeast. That's what he's got to do at New Jersey. He's got to get kids from Pennsylvania to fill out his roster. So that was a blow. So, Chris, there are 3 players who've announced dates who I think OU currently leads on. Doesn't mean they're gonna sign them, but there are 3 guys that have dates coming up where I think OU leads coming out of the weekend. First one is Deacon Schmidt is announcing on June 28th. He's the 6'5", 320-pound offensive tackle from Colorado. He might be taller than 6'5". He looks huge in the photos from him from this weekend. He's a very large kid. He's a perfect right tackle. So that would be a nice addition there. Then Danny Odom, the other cornerback from Florida, the one everyone thought was about to commit to OU, he's canceled some visits and is getting ready to announce on June 23rd. Looks like OU's leading, and that would be 2. He's a 6'2", 180-pound cornerback as well. He's a top 100 player on Rivals. He's from Florida. So he's basically, he would be a big addition. I know you would add 2 corners with length in the class, kind of a surprise. But if you can get talent, especially that kind of talent at cornerback, where measurables are sadly as important as almost any position on the field, that would be another big addition. So that's the second person. And then On July 7th, Tyler Ruxer, the tight end from Indiana, is announcing. That's trending to OU. I think there's a good chance that we possibly, by that date time frame, we may hear announcements from commitment dates from Braxton Lindsey, the linebacker from Arkansas, and Dallas Dickerson, the wide receiver from Georgia. I think he wants to go on around July 4th. But as it stands right now, coming out of the weekend, I think OU leads for all 5 of those players. So that would be 5 more commitments. Lindsey's a 4-star. Ruxer's a 4-star. Odom's a 4-star. Deacon Schmidt is a 4-star. And Dallas Dickerson is the only guy who's not. But I've watched his film. It is pretty damn good. And the guy runs a 10.3, 100 meters. So take that for what it's worth. So I think that's where things stand. So that would put OU, that could get OU up to 15 commitments, depending upon how this quarterback situation resolves itself one way or the other. Mm-hmm. One last thing, Felix Ojo canceled his OU official visit. Says he's ready. He's just ready to make a decision. I think he's done with recruiting. He's been on the road like 7 weekends in a row. We've been talking about the fact Texas was about to put out a bunch of money to sign him. Looks like, if I had to guess, that's what's going to happen. But it looks like Michigan may have made a massive offer to him as well. So keep an eye out for Michigan to possibly steal Felix Ojo from Texas. I don't think it'll happen, but that's the word getting around the recruiting circles, is that he decided that Michigan and Texas are his final 2, and he didn't need to visit OU. And I think partly not wasting OU's time, not wasting Bill's time, and just letting OU move on to other prospects if they want to. So that's some of the that's 2026 recruiting news. That's most up to date. The 2 running backs, DeZephon Walker will be on campus this weekend, and then Ryan Estrada I think will be on campus midweek. He's coming in for a visit after the weekend. So that's your 2 running backs. Walker's kind of the bigger power back at 6 foot 205, 5'11", 205, 210. And Estrada is the speed guy at around 5'11", about 185, I think. That's what a couple of services have him listed at. He's from El Paso. Michigan and Alabama want Ryan Estrada. He's a 4-star. DeZephon Walker. OU's fighting Missouri, Nebraska, a couple other teams. He's also a 4-star. So I don't know if this is a 2 running back situation or first guy to commit gets the spot. But both of those guys, we could hear news on Walker this weekend. He's a big Adrian Peterson fan. That never bodes poorly for OU when you're recruiting running backs. Seems to have really clicked with DeMarco Murray. I know there are varied opinions on DeMarco, and obviously the last 2 years of the running game has allowed those to bubble up, and the data's there. But DeMarco can recruit. He knows how to land kids. That is not his problem.
Is there any scenario where we take both, or we just remain patient, just for the hope of maybe we circle back to Hatton at some point?
Well, I could see you taking one and then circling back to Hatton this fall, or if you like the Estrada kid on film's kind of fascinating. I mean, he had nearly 2,500 yards rushing last year for 32 touchdowns and averaged like 14 and a half yards a carry. His highlight reel, the first 12 plays are touchdown runs of over 70 yards. So there's some impact there. I would say DeZephon is a sort of bigger frame kid. He's a load to tackle, load to bring down. Looks really good on film. Chris, I would think one running back right now is what they will do for the summer, and maybe they'll change that opinion in the fall depending upon who leaves, who gets hurt, what's going on with the running back room. But I think one running back this summer is probably where OU will stick. But things are really fluid because they look like they're taking 2 cornerbacks, and I thought there's a good chance they would sign no cornerbacks in this class. So from the talent acquisition point, Nagy and Brent are moving stuff around. Things seem to be pretty fluid.
Jason, anything to piggyback off of that?
Nope. I'm
All
good on
right.
it. I'm just in here going back and forth with some of these silly.
He's having some fun in chat. So a couple other notes. I didn't mention this we mentioned this a little bit about Derek Johnson. His younger brother, Darius Johnson, is a top 100 big cornerback for 2027, 4-star top 100 guy out of California. You think it would be surprising if OU is not at least, I don't know if they're a lock-on favorite. And sometimes brothers play good at different schools. But I think that would obviously set OU up in a good position for him. And I talked about this a little bit last week, but Trenton Blaylock was at OU camp today, I believe. I'm trying to get some confirmation of that. But what I do know is OU offered Trenton Blaylock today. He's Tory Blaylock's younger brother.
And
he's a 6'1", 6 foot, 180-pound cornerback. He was the fastest player at the A&M camp last weekend. OU not sitting back, not worrying about it, just made another offer. So if you're Jay Valai, you may have 2 top 100 cornerbacks, not quite in the bag, but you may have a massive lead for them. So interesting point there. If you're on Twitter, follow Tory's dad. Derek Blaylock is a good follow on Twitter. He's always posting really good stuff. And again, Derek was a really good NFL player. So if OU was to get Trent, I got zero issue having 2 kids from that DNA. And then one last thing I'll mention, I'm not sure OU hasn't offered him yet, but I just thought I'd mention it. I'm sure most OU fans of any aging myself here, remember Jimmy Wilkerson, the defensive end on the national championship team. And he had that special game against Texas where he had like 5 sacks and just abused the Longhorns all day. They couldn't block him. I mean, it was just, he was a good Sooner. He left for the NFL early because, he made money, and sadly he passed away last year. But his kid is at Carl Albert, and he is going to be a freshman this fall, but he is 6'7", 260 as a rising freshman. And if you remember Jimmy's athleticism, if his son has anything close to that, and his mom apparently is an athlete as well, was a college athlete as well. So, maybe there's another OU legacy that could be a factor down the road for the Sooners. But if you remember Jimmy Wilkerson, the thought of like a 6'7" Jimmy Wilkerson at the end is just kind of frightening. I mean, he'd have been a 1st-round pick if he was like 6'7" with his ability. He was like 6'3", 250. But if he was like 6'7", 260 with his athleticism, and we're talking, like ridiculous elite kind of measurables. So we've got more Texas guys today. Wow, it's so funny.
They come out in grows because their guys don't really post like this. They don't
do effective, good podcasts for free like this.
No, it's mostly goggle, and then OU sucks, goggle again, both hands, all of that. Anyway, moving on.
So that's the recruiting. Obviously, one other player is visiting this weekend. Josiah Jefferson, Tony Jefferson's young brother, is visiting. This sort of basically came about through Twitter. Tony Jefferson posted that his brother was looking for a home, and he cross-tweeted Jim Nagy, and then Jim Nagy looked at his film and said, "Tony, your brother has our offer. Bring him on. Come on down." So he's a 6'5", 230. He's a tight end. I'm not sure how this will shake out, but there's a possibility he could enroll as part of the most recent class, get on campus. He's an interesting physical athlete with some good measurables. What OU could do with him at tight end is interesting. He certainly has better measurables and better athleticism from what I've seen in film than some of the guys we have at tight end right now that aren't really making much of an impact. So,
can we, Chris Mason? I'm sorry, but I have to give some credit. First off, two of the best comments I've seen in here. He said Texas and Kansas fans are in cults. I partially agree with that. I don't know about Kansas so much, but Sooner Cowboys, one of the comments of the night right here. This gets me excited because this is Sooner Cowboys being very optimistic. He says Stutzman was a good tackler, but I think Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, Samuel, and Kendall Daniels will be a nice rotation. I just think they are better athletically than Stutzman was.
Well, I don't know about the second part. I like what he said in the first part, but Stutz, I mean, he ran a 4.55, right?
There's no two ways around it. But he's not wrong on what he's saying. That the ceiling with these guys is maybe a little bit higher in some instances, right?
Well, I think this is a case of the total is better. The group totally. The total score of this group could be better than the total score of last year.
I think so, and I think Samuel Omosigho might be the best one out of those guys.
Well, you see the photos of Sam, and Sam has obviously working in the weight room. He's very fast. He's explosive. Kobe McKenzie, out of the shadow of Stutz as a leader. We don't know what he could do. He's worked very hard to rebuild his frame, to get better at to get better, faster, all those things. Kip Lewis, if he carries on, and again, this is one of these things. It's like Todd Bates defensive tackles get better year over year, right? Mm-hmm. And linebackers under Brent get better year over year, right? We saw that with Stutz. We're seeing with Kip Lewis. So the thing about it is, Kip Lewis and Sam O and Kobe and Kendall Daniels. I mean, you wish Kendall Daniels had like another year in this system, right? This year, and then maybe he could blow up this year and be a draft pick. But I kind of wish. I think I think at the end of the year we're gonna wish we could bring Kendall Daniels back for another year because he would be that much better. But I mean, I think the group could be better. But I don't think any individual linebacker will be better than Stutz.
Well, let me. I think I have something on that. Okay, so Ryan C says they're saying Nesta is getting a lot of run too, and that could be. They like Nesta as well. I think they really like this line.
And Taylor Hine had a great spring. So
young linebackers. But what I'll add to that is this right here. Out of those 4 to 5 guys that will be in that rotation. My fault, Jason. I'm over here hitting his desk again. But out of those 4 guys in that rotation, as you see the core guys, the only thing that I would say would have me thinking, damn, I wish Stutzman was here. I wish Stutz was here. Is who is going to be that guy that comes downhill in the middle, stands 2 feet, and says, hey, I'm not moving. You're going to have to go through me, or you're going to have to go over me, or you're going to have to go by me. I'm not moving. You can't go through me. Because that's what I saw Stutz do. Watching some of the games and rewind, obviously you go back to that Bama game. We'll leave that there. But I will say in that Bama game, I think Stutz, I remember calling my uncle after that first series, and I said, hey, I believe we will win this game. Because I told an OSU fan who was like, y'all not going to win this game. This and that. I was like, watching Milroe, which I'm a fan of Milroe, they play right into our hands because we can play. We could chase him down. I said, Venables and company are going to take away that QB run. I said, they're going to take that away and force him to throw the ball and beat them through the air. And that first play of the game, when Milroe did that quarterback lead, and he ran right through that hole, and Stutz met him. I said, hey, see, those are the plays that you're talking about. And Stutz did that an awful lot. Running backs, quarterbacks, whoever the hell was in that backfield trying to run, that was Stutz. That was one of his specialties. So it's just one of those things where you're asking, who is going to be that guy who will be instinctual like him on blitzes, different things like that, but also who's going to be able to stick their nose in that hole and meet you at first blow and get you down. So, I mean, that's what I'm looking for from one of these guys. Could it be Kobe McKenzie? Could it be Sam O? those are the guys I'm kind of looking for to be that tough guy in that middle. But I kind of agree with what Sooner Cowboys are saying. That's why I think it was a hell of a comment, simply because I think that you have a chance to be better, just like you do in the secondary. I think that you have a chance to be better because, don't get me wrong, you can't necessarily replace a Stutzman and a Bowman.
No,
but
the leadership is the biggest part of that, right?
Leadership but when you look at the collective talent and the guys they're able to rotate, and if things go the way they're supposed to, you're not having to drop off in those rotations. You're just adding. You can't.
Well, and the pieces like, we'll take the hopium taking a big hopium hit here, right? But if you have Gentry Williams and Eli Bowen as your cornerback duo, the secondary is a lot better than last year already, right? And then if you have Robert Spears-Jennings and Peyton Bowen playing up to his potential, I'm not sure the drop off at safety is as wide as we think it will be. I mean, the leadership thing, Jason is completely right. Leaders have got to develop. Leaders on the field have got to step up and be the guys, like you said, rally the team. It's 4th and 1 from the 2-yard line. Who's making a play? We don't. You can't
do that while your leaders are already in the room. You know what I mean? When they
you're exactly right. When
they have to do this now,
right? Yeah. You gotta kill the old leader of the pack before a new one can rise up, right? And hyenas, lions, whatever, whatever social organization you want to talk, wolves, whatever. You gotta, there's an alpha, and another alpha can't rise up until the old alpha moves on, right? And that's what we've got to see is the old alphas have moved on. Who's going to lead the pack? And we just don't know that yet. So that's that's something that will shake out. I mean, but we've not heard that there's any problems on that side of the ball. In spring, they were talking. There wasn't any sense there. We're not sure who's really going to step up and be that guy.
They didn't go get anybody.
No,
in the portal. So I mean, if you think about
the defense, they thought the defense was ready to roll. Our Mason Thomas could be a leader. That's definitely somebody who could step up and be a leader. Robert Spears-Jennings in his senior year, Kendall Dolby as well. So I think it's a good question. It's an interesting point, but again, you lose 2 good pieces, but it just seems like the totality of what OU's bringing back on defense is better. And
I think, and as much as I love Ethan as much as the next guy, even though we gave him shit for a while, but the talent at the defensive end position is on another level.
Yeah,
than where it's been.
The potential there it's a 10. Yeah. Ethan at his best, and he played his best for OU. We got the Chavis and Ethan got every ounce of talent out of that body. And on the
Golding's
field.
Got it right. He's talking about like Woody Washington. By his last few years, the younger talent had gone well past him.
Yeah, so we'll see that. We'll see what happens. But yeah,
we're not even necessarily talking about. We don't even have to talk about Marvin Jones Jr. But Marvin Jones Jr. He is. If you look at that guy, he's in order for him to play, he's going to have the motor up for sure because there's other dudes in the room that'll be just fine if he doesn't.
And his coach is not going to let him. I mean, if he's not high, no. I mean, Chavis will be.
That's what, and I've been saying that about everybody. All these people that, I mean, we're going to sit here and badmouth. We're worried about Peyton Bowen. He was hurt. The dude was hurt all last year. And you had Billy Bowman and Robert Spears-Jennings doing their thing, plus Boganowski and Powers getting their time in there as well. I mean, shit was happening. I don't know what we're worried about there.
Hardy too. Can't forget.
Yeah, Hardy as well. There's a lot of dudes back there. So the thing is that like,
yeah, he's going to have to go. He's got. I mean, again, to use a bad analogy here, he's going to have to go kill some gazelles for the pride, or he ain't going to be in the pride.
That's correct. And so,
I mean, that's the truth for lots of folks. You're going to have to be out there killing gazelles, or you're not going to be in the pride any longer. You're not going to be. Now, by that, you're not going to start because there are younger lions behind you who are looking to go out and kill some gazelles, for lack of a better term.
what I would tell you though is that Marvin Jones Jr. is a freaking freak athlete, a freak athlete,
and that's the fun part. I think there are some definite bright spots of this BV era, things that we hadn't seen. Obviously, look, the time with Lincoln and stuff like that, the winning, the core of his wins and stuff like that, those were fun. But it was also fun seeing, the defense get a little bit nasty with like Isaiah, Thomas and all the rest of those guys, Perrion Winfrey and those guys, and Nick Benito, can't forget him.
Still wasn't good enough. Oh, Nick was great.
It wasn't necessarily good enough or whatnot, but it's fun. It's fun to get back to that time where you can rotate guys in and see production and see guys get busy, especially on the defensive line, seeing those rotations at DN, D tackle, different things like that, and you feel confident with those guys.
Yeah, like think about guys like Danny Okoye, and come on, bro. If Marvin doesn't step up and become Godzilla, somebody else will.
And one of the things I'll say as well, and I think this is kind of a underrated thing about, like I said, this BV era, is that each season you've seen multiple positions where they've had guys that may have came up just a little bit late, but they've popped, right? Corner, these past couple of years, CJ Colden out of nowhere became one of our staples, right? Then all of a sudden Eli Bowen gets thrown in there, and that freshman All-American, right? You see last year, R. Mason Thomas really has kind of just a renaissance. I wouldn't even say a resurgence.
It took till year 3, just like what we're waiting to see with PJ, right?
That's a renaissance. You saw Kit Lewis, linebacker, different thing. I mean, it's guys pop out, and you're like, okay, yes, we see the stars, we see this, all the rest of that stuff.
It's a different dude, man. Kip is a different dude.
It's just one of those things, man. We got, like we said, got to wait and see. But I like that comment. So with that, let's keep on moving. Let's see. Let's share. Let's move to our next topic, and let's go to where are we at? Oh, sorry, fellas. Let me pull this up. There we go. There we go.
Blow it up a little bit.
See if we can make this a little bit bigger.
Just for the times.
Oh,
there's a couple that I guess they're still flexing the games.
They are.
They don't have them all. It says early on South Carolina and Ole Miss games. Are you kidding?
Well, that's what we can talk about. So,
hey man, I'd much rather be playing at South Carolina in the morning time than at night.
Well, that's the thing. So, Auburn is still flex, so we don't know when that is, and that makes sense because I think that could be a primetime game depending upon what Auburn does and what OU does. If OU beats Michigan, I think that Auburn game is a primetime game. And then we got South Carolina, as you said, it's 11 a.m. or noon. If you can avoid a night game in South Carolina, that's good. I'm a little bit, Jason and Chris, I'm a little surprised though that our game with Ole Miss at home didn't get like a prime time, a flex slot where we could be in prime time.
I don't think they're expecting very much from them. Is why.
Do we think Ole Miss is going to take a big step back?
They don't have any defense left.
Okay.
They lost
I agree with you.
That defense pretty much. And then, pretty much.
They had a couple of guys back, but you're right. They lost a lot.
A lot of it pretty much. The biggest part of it. And then they lost basically they're all new receivers coming in. I think they're going to be good, but I don't. Here's the thing. I don't know that I think that they were that damn good last year.
Okay.
OU could have. OU without if Sexton doesn't go down, do they win that game?
They definitely take it to the fourth quarter, I think. It is a one possession play in the fourth quarter, and then Jackson Arnold fumbles and Ole Miss runs it in for a touchdown. But
Right.
but yeah, I think it's interesting. If you're South Carolina, this OU game is probably one of the games on your schedule that you're looking at, and you were hoping perhaps it would be a night game, right, to give you a little more momentum
Yeah,
boost.
I was definitely hoping it was going to be.
So for that atmosphere, to get that win instead, because they lost, that LSU game they lost last year was a noon kickoff. They had a couple, other than the plastering of the Sooners in Norman. They were a little dodgy earlier when the games were earlier. But for Ole Miss, I think that's a little bit of a surprise. That's an 11 a.m. or noon kickoff. I just thought maybe that would be a primetime game. But I mentioned this to a buddy, and he said that weekend's a little stacked with other SEC matchups. So that's probably more a result of the stacked weekend than it is. And then there's anything about OU and Ole Miss. Do you think the Auburn game's going to end up being a night game?
I think it's maybe a 5:30 game.
I don't.
Or maybe a 2:30.
You know what? I
2:30.
think it'll be a 2:30 kickoff simply because I think those first 4 weeks are stacked with some damn good football games. So I think it's one of those things where give me a second. Let me look. What's Auburn's schedule leading up to us? That's the question.
Well, they have that. They have a Baylor. No, they play Baylor, don't they? Do I have that right? I think they play Baylor game 1.
Mm-hmm. They do.
And
it's on Friday night. It's on a Friday.
Yeah, they play on Friday night get at Baylor, South Alabama at home. Then they go to Texas A&M. Then they play Ball State at home, and then they come to us, and they have Georgia right after that. They have a hell of a schedule to start.
If they drop that Baylor game, A&M kicks them in the teeth. They could be Hugh Freeze could be like dead man walking into Norman as early as 9:20.
Either that or Georgia at the least. And I wouldn't count. And if they lose to Baylor, then I mean honestly, I would not be surprised if South Alabama had made it really funny for a little while until they went ahead and put the clamps on them. But I think I can see that game being a 2:30 game. I don't see it being a night game. I think the hope is to also obviously be
If Auburn's gonna have to be undefeated for us to get that in prime time, is what you think?
Yeah, for sure.
OU and Auburn will both have to be undefeated. Even if OU can take care of Michigan, that's not going to be enough. And be 3-0, that's not going to be enough to get that game into prime time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's about right. That's about right anyway.
Yeah. So
I don't know how many people I know there's a lot. They're like a quote sexy pick to be kind of good. I don't know how many people that watched Jackson Arnold last year can really think that.
They kind of ride in the whole, Arnold was a victim of the circumstances in Norman, which from an external viewpoint, I can buy that narrative.
I don't necessarily disagree with all that. I'm just saying that look, when you've seen the quarterbacks that you've seen at Oklahoma, you know the difference.
I'm not gonna lie to you guys. The other day, and this is gonna sound so crazy, but I was playing EA 25. I was like, I said, shit, it is hard throwing to Britton Thompson. I'm sorry. Yeah. I was like, there's no separation created out there. It's just speed. And I said, maybe I was wrong. Maybe Jackson deserved a second chance. But no, in all honesty, man, he's gonna have weapons at his disposal with Coleman and then that kid that they got from I believe Georgia Tech. Hopefully, I'm right about that.
Kevin.
Singleton, right? I think that's
a bad dude, bro.
Yeah, bad so dude. Those two are gonna give fits, and they had some other good wide receivers as well. And for the early part of that game, until it just did not work anymore, they were successful throwing down the sideline and also just throwing those quick curls and hitch routes as well with like Peyton Thorne. So I thought that for what it was worth, I thought Hugh Freeze was doing a great job. It was just one of those things where, you know, at some point, like we always say, your best players, especially your quarterback, he's going to have to go out there and win you a couple of games. And same could be said for Mateer. Looking at this schedule with some of these games, you know, Bama, LSU, even Ole Miss, South Carolina. South Carolina will be interesting this year because I don't think we're going to go out there and turn the ball over 3 consecutive times and put them in plus yardage situations.
South Carolina is going to crash back to earth this year too.
I can agree with that. It's just one of those things where for a lot of teams, Texas, OU, Ty Simpson with Bama, you're going to have to go out. There's going to be a couple of games out there where you have to go win games. Georgia with Gunnar Stockton. Your guys are going to have to go out there and kind of will you to a victory. It's not necessarily going to be given to you. So it's just one of those things with Jackson, like, you know, how good is he still gun shy, or has Hugh Freeze fixed that? Is Hugh Freeze able to run his offense effectively?
Well,
and still gun shy?
And Hugh Freeze is not a fixer of quarterbacks.
No,
that's not who he is. So I'll be honest. If they drop that Baylor game and A&M kicks their teeth in, we won't see Jackson Arnold. We'll see Deuce McKnight because Freeze will have to try and.
I think it is going to. I don't think there's a doubt. I think if they lose, he won't make it to week 4. No way. I don't think he's going to anyway. I think he's going to have a mysterious injury.
I think he could lose the job in August if he keeps throwing picks. Like, you know, I mean, a lot of Auburn people were like,
he threw a lot of interceptions in spring.
You were like, does he throw this many picks? And we're like, yeah, he does.
He does. And fumbles a lot too.
He fumbles too. So when you run him, be careful because that could also come back and hurt you. So we'll see. I mean, yeah. You know, I mean, Jason's right, though. I mean, the back half of OU's schedule, the question marks are what does Bama look like? What does Ole Miss look like? You know, I think Missouri's not going to be very good. And then, you know, the final game, what does LSU look like? They think they fixed their defense. I know someone who doesn't like a lot of the players they picked up is like, I don't think that's a big addition. I don't think that's a big addition. So we'll see what their defense looks like. I know their offense is going to be pretty good, but we by the time we play them, we could be stacked defensively. Like, okay, you got us last year because our secondary, you know, we were having a hard time finding another cornerback, and you know, and you got us, and you got us because we didn't have an offense, so our defense was on the field too long, making too many plays, trying to make big plays everywhere. You got us last year, but you know, this is a different deal in Norman now that we actually have an offense, and we can actually, our defense doesn't have to worry about, doesn't have to be so stressed about shutting out Nussmeier and those guys. So, there was the SEC podcast guys who are doing an interesting job. I mean, they're SEC, big SEC homers, but their podcast is entertaining. They were saying that, the best case scenario for OU, which they think mapped out, they're like, OU goes 10-2 and beats LSU in Norman, and I was like, wow, okay, all right, that's not any.
I think that it will. I think the 9-3, 10-2 could come down to that game.
Yeah, and and again, I mean, we still don't understand how Nussmeier was able to come back after R. Mason Thomas.
What do you mean? He got a shot.
Well, yeah.
But how he didn't
break a bone with that. That's what I mean. I mean, I get you that he rolled his ankle and they shot him up and he was fine, but how he didn't
he came back looking way better than he was before he went down.
Hey, did we discuss the South Carolina game being the early game? I think that's what I was just talking about.
I'm surprised at that. That tells me that I think that the SEC and possibly ESPN, they may not think as much about South Carolina as a lot of other people do, because I know I don't think anything about them.
Wait a minute.
I think they're going to be shitty.
Isn't that that's like LSU out? That's like LSU Bama. week, isn't it? Or is that who plays that week? Somebody has to be playing.
I'm checking the schedule here. All right. So it's SEC, and that's week 8, right? The
As their
13th.
defense
The
and
13th.
offense on third down conversion. I love that. I love that prediction there, House Money. You're not getting a bet from me on that. I believe you.
Okay, so the lineup.
Maybe it'll have something to do with it.
So the lineup where OU is kicking as a noon kickoff, basically, it's noon Eastern or noon Central, basically. So it's Tennessee, Alabama that week. It's Ole Miss, Georgia, and then the third game, I guess, then the other big game I would say is Oklahoma, South Carolina. So if those three, I'm a little surprised it's not a flex weekend. Or not, I mean, obviously Alabama, Tennessee is probably a primetime game. And then I would say Ole Miss, Georgia, depending upon how those two teams go, is probably like the 2:30 game. That's what I would guess. And then OU South. That's why OU South Carolina is getting that noon kickoff. But I would have thought you might have had an option to make it a flex game. So that was the only surprising thing to me about what I saw. Because there are a lot. I mean, I know Jason doesn't think much of South Carolina. Maybe he's could be right about that. But there are a lot of people pumping them up a little bit.
Yeah, but they've lost every defensive lineman except for that freshman All-American.
Yeah, they did pick up some guys. But you're right. You're right. They lost the big safety. They lost the linebacker that was really good as well. Sellers. I think a lot of it is Sellers hype. They think Sellers is going to take a big leap forward this year. I don't know who they have at running back to replace Sanders. They lost a couple of receivers. So, yeah, I mean, they've had a good couple of good recruiting classes under Beamer. So they're an interesting team to watch. They could, let me take a look at what I think they'll be when they come to Norman. So they play LSU right before they play us. So we play Texas. They play LSU, but they should be at worst 5-1. They like us. They should be at worst 5-1 by the time they play us. So that seems like a big matchup to me. So that's kind of interesting.
It's weird that it's going to be, because you would figure that they would want that to be a night game. What other games are going on that week though is the question.
Yeah, it's Alabama, Tennessee, and it's Georgia, Ole Miss are the two bigger games. I mean, you've got Drek like LSU, Vandy, Texas, Kentucky.
Okay.
So it's not completely stacked.
So it says early. Early means that it could be 2:30, or could also be 2:30, right?
No. The South Carolina and Ole Miss games are going to be either 11 or 12.
Oh, okay.
No, not a 2:30 window. Flex is the 2:30 window.
Flex is 2:30 to 5:30.
Or maybe the primetime game as well. So it could be probably in any one of those slots as I read it. So I think they have 3 premium windows, right? 2:30, the old CBS window, and then they got the 7 o'clock ESPN window, and then I think they have a 6 o'clock one before that. So, I'm just a little surprised South Carolina didn't get a flex window. But because, like I said, they have to play Vatech, South Carolina State, Vandy, Missouri, and Kentucky. So they should be 5-0, right? And then they play LSU, and then they play Oklahoma, and then they play Alabama, and then they play Ole Miss. So, that 3-game stretch of LSU, Oklahoma, and Alabama, that's where South Carolina's season really gets decided. That's a tough stretch. If you're Alabama and you catch them after LSU and Oklahoma, I think you like your chances there.
Texas fans acting like Arch was so good last year that he didn't, when he couldn't beat out a 7th rounder.
The 7th rounder was playing like ass.
And he was playing like ass, and he still couldn't beat out the 7th rounder.
It's one thing if Ewers was had a fantastic season, and then the NFL was just like, well, we don't like you, which happens all the time, right? I mean, Ewers was playing like crap.
I saw people or Texas fans dropping some gospel on people on Twitter talking about Arch, saying that, you know, you guys say he's never played against SEC teams, and then they drop film of him, you know, doing his thing against Mississippi State.
Woo!
Dad. So,
The brand has finally returned. Your brand.
I'm just saying.
Again, he could have a good year.
Des, if you're going to say this, look, I just want to. Stark was never going to start him over Quinn, no matter what happened. So, and y'all feel so good about this football team when you had a better chance of winning a natty.
With, you got a favorable ass schedule, favorable ass playoff schedule.
Wow.
And you didn't go all in. I mean,
on the 1 yard line, you don't even put Arch in.
I mean, let's be clear. Nick Saban benched Hurts and put in Tua to win a national championship. Sark's not going to do the same thing. Give me a break. And if Sark is too chicken shit to put in, Manning, and he's better than Ewers, what does that say about Sark?
That's a worse. That's even more damning to me that he didn't play the guy that was the better because of some bullshit loyalty.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, last year was set up to win a title. I don't know that you really beat Ohio State. Ohio State really, could have blown him out. But
yeah, Travion Henderson was the one who screwed up the blowout.
Screwed the blow up out. I mean, but whatever. So, but yeah. So let's get back to the front office that Jeff Ketchum says it's nice, but his quote is, I'm paraphrasing him. Well, I like the hire, and it's really good, but what does it say about OU that they're spending all this money on an analysis on a scouting department instead of just buying the best players like Texas does? My joking point was he sounds like one of those idiot Nokia executives when the iPhone came out and who said, well, it's an interesting product, but it's not going to affect our business any.
He's a tool. I mean, the thing is that, you often when you feel like you're on top, you often overlook what's actually happening right in front of you, because it really wasn't until Gary Patterson came and fixed things, that PK was able to take it to another level. And it seems to be the thing for him. Obviously, had success last year, but you got to go back to it. Still, a lot of people say Jimmy Lake was the reason. Some people say GP was the reason as well. So, anywho, Jason, give me your thoughts about the front office staff, man. You talked about it earlier. You say over 60 plus years of experience. What makes you happy, confident, excited? Any of those emotions about this front office staff?
Well, as I said earlier, I think that there's been, at least it's been a little bit bumpy coming in. It's a new thing, so I understand that part. But I think I hope that they're gonna. I'm glad that it's filled out now as a full staff, because the retention part is the part that concerns me, right? I think that you need to they know what they're doing with these, especially these defensive guys. Don't mess with that. You know what I mean? You don't really have to do much with that. I think that the staff is, 67 years of NFL experience, 60 plus years of college experience. These guys know what they're looking at, and we know that this coaching staff can recruit. So not only recruit, but it can also develop. So I feel like it's a good thing. I think this is a good thing all the way around. And here's the one thing I'll say is, you start losing, we were talking about the cornerback that they lost to Rutgers. Look, that tells me that maybe Nagy wasn't as high on the guy as maybe we expected that he might have been, right? he certainly wasn't high enough on him to go to the number that Rutgers had to have probably gone to, right? So we either got to trust him or we got to not trust him. So, I mean, they're also.
We can't
man,
freak out over one data point either, right?
No. And this is just the scarred tissue of OU fans right now. That the knee-jerk reaction, the freaking out over every little thing. This is what it is. It is what it is. But I don't know, man. I just feel like you have to trust them or you have to not. But I mean, look at them. I mean, Lake Dawson and Taylor Red, I love those hires. Drew Hill as well, director of scouting. Come on, man. They did a great job with it. So to me, does BV have any say on which players they have on the team, or is it all nagging his staff? I guess I would ask you that, Mr. Mason. I know he's got control of the roster at this point, right? But I don't think he said a number of times that he's not going to tell coaches no to players. But although I think he has done that.
Well, I think it's a process.
Doing traits that if you've got those traits, Des, and you've got coaches that actually develop talent, it does matter. Those guys know what the hell they're doing.
Well, I mean, to say traits don't win football games, right? So that's ridiculous. They do. I mean,
and they win
but they did. But if they're not used right and they're not developed right and coached right, then yeah, you're right.
They went and found guys in the damn portal too, by the way.
So I think the big thing I like about where does OU take a player or not? Where's the locus of that? It's an ongoing, fluid discussion between Nagy and Brent, right? And the coaching staff and the evaluation scouting staff, right? The coaching staffs are we have good recruiters on our staff. They have connections with high schools. Emmett Jones is going to hear about players from high school coaches in Dallas. That's just the way it works. And Emmett's going to bring those guys to the scouting staff, but sometimes the scouting staff is going to bring a film to Emmett Jones and say, we think this guy's great. What do you think? We want you to recruit him. And Emmett Jones is going to look at the film and, take a look at it and say, yeah, I think you're right. But the coaches have all said that if the scouting staff can do the preliminary evaluations and feed them the guys that they like, that they should recruit, that's going to free up so much time for the coaches to do other things in recruiting and talent development.
Well, Chris Mason, I think here's the thing. I think people are not getting the full picture. I have friends, not at OU, but I have friends at other colleges, universities that are on staffs where that is their job, to do those preliminary evaluations for that scouting, linebacker room, quarterback room, whatever the case may be, and let the coaches know, hey, these are kids that I found. I know you got these kids or whatever. But now you're not necessarily replacing that, but essentially you are replacing that with the eyes of these guys.
Right. It's not a GA.
Yeah.
It's not a guy. I mean, a lot of those guys doing that are guys right out, players who have realized their NFL career is not going anywhere and they're trying to get into coaching, and this is the first job they can get, right?
Yeah.
They're not like Lake Dawson of 15, 20 years of scouting experience. So you're replacing, let's just call it, you're replacing GAs and part-timers with experienced veterans in scouting and evaluation. And I think it's pretty impressive that OU invested as much money in this as they did, right? This isn't filled with, the Stacey Ford guy, they just flat out stole from UCLA, right? He was the director of UCLA player development, and OU just basically stole him. He was almost the GM at UCLA, and OU stole him. He came to go work for Jim Nagy because, more than anything, I think, Chris, this speaks to the respect and acumen Jim Nagy has in the industry. That folks like Dawson's like, Well, yeah, I'll come work for Jim Nagy. That's a win. That's a win, right? I respect his ability so much that being part of his organization, that's a win for me.
Yep.
So it's when you look at it, it's a veteran organization. We now have more experience looking at things, and again, it'll work with the staff. Again, they'll find guys for Bill. Bill will find guys and send them tape.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's more of just, if you have our staff looking at tape and these guys looking at tape, the odds of you making an evaluation mistake are reduced, right? The more eyes looking at something, the less you have of some bias slipping in.
Yep.
And you're like, well, why do you want this guy? Oh, I just love him on film. Yeah, but he's a 5'11" middle linebacker.
Yeah.
And he's 200 pounds. We need a guy 6'3", 240 to survive 12 games in the SEC. You're right.
And that's the thing that I think that that's getting overlooked here, because we're focusing so much on the trades and this and that. I think where the true balance lies is that, hey, Chavis, hey, Bates, hey, Valai, you guys have a style of player that you like. Here are 5 guys from our big board that we think fit that mold. Now, obviously, we would like to have maybe a 6'1", 6'2" guy, because we got a lot of many little guys at corner right now, right? So if they're able to go out there and find guys that you can compare and contrast and say, okay, I see this now. I didn't know about this kid, or I didn't see this film, or let me go look at his film again and try to see what you guys are looking at. But I think that these coaches are still able to recruit the style of player that they want, a la DeMarco. I mean, we talked about the Estrada kid, we talked about the Walker kid. So I think Unc was in the chat saying that Walker kind of has a Ramondre Stevenson style. I think that you said that the Estrada kid's a fast kid. Looks like he's pretty fast. So that has kind of been the mold of running backs that DeMarco has been looking for, those speedy backs. Blaylock, Sawchuck was here. These guys who are supposed to be speedsters or whatnot, and you combine that with obviously power, like an X-Rob, and then kind of a guy that does both things, and which I believe Tatum could be. Just have to still see. The verdict's still out on him, but I think that they're still able to recruit the style of player and play that they want. It's just one of those things of let's try to mesh these concepts as far as the intangible side of it. But I definitely get what he was saying with his comment. I mean, time is of the essence. We don't necessarily have time to wait and develop guys and all the rest of those things. I want BV to be the coach, and I think BV can be the coach and lead us to where we're trying to go. But it's got to happen this year for sure. It's definitely got to happen this year. Granted, we have said on this path, we think that with how things are set up, we do think that BV probably gets another year regardless. But
yeah, I think so too.
This year is
it depends on the tenor. He can't have he can't have a repeat of the South Carolina game or he's over.
Yeah.
Well,
but we're not set up for that, right? At quarterback, we're not set up for a repeat like that. We're just not.
Right. I don't think that it was a quarterback situation. It was a damn play calling situation that was on Seth, and it had been bad for weeks by then.
Yeah,
weeks and weeks.
It was, everyone's always asking how many wins does Brent need to keep? And to me, it's like the team just has to look. We have a tough schedule depending upon how it plays out, right?
Yeah.
We're playing a lot of playing difficult games on the road.
You can't afford to get blown out and shit at home or anything like that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be competitive
and go 6-6 and then get a bunch of blowouts. You can't have it.
No, he's got to. It's got to be a team where objectively OU fans are like, yeah, they fought. It was close games. We lost a couple of close games here or there. They beat the teams. They beat the teams.
They win a couple of those close games that come down to the wire too, because they did something right.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just if OU goes, has 5 games decided by 3 points and goes 2-3 in those, and it's fourth quarter games against good opponents who look good on the field, then yeah, things get the conversation becomes more interesting. There's a lot of layers to how OU looks on the field, and do they look improved, and on that standpoint. But yeah, I mean, but I do think Chris, they've gone their chips all in, getting Ott, getting McCullough, getting another wide receiver after Gibson got hurt. OU's pushed all of their offensive chips in, right? Like, look, we've given you everything. We bought the best quarterback we could get for you. We got you the offensive coordinator and the quarterback combo to jumpstart everything. I think everyone kind of ignores that combo, right? It's that it wasn't that we just got the best quarterback. We got his offensive coordinator as well.
If you're not high on OU, what are you high on? I said it last week when you were on, or earlier this week when you were on
the early morning show. Yeah. It's and then you go and get the best running back out of the portal, the best impact player. You look at spring, you're like, we could be better here, and you go get a guy, and then you realize offensive center is your weakest point on the depth chart. You go get the best offensive center in the portal in the spring, the big guy from Stanford. And
plus
then,
the best offensive tackle too.
So you got a good offensive lineman in the winter portal and Simmons, and then then a wide receiver gets hurt. OU does not. Well, we'll just hope everything's gonna be okay. They go get it's Jermichael Carter, right? Jermichael Carter. That's his last name, right? Jermichael Carter. And they go get Jermichael Carter, who looks really good on film, and based upon what they had available, got the best guy out of the portal they could. So, they're not sitting back and just and being static. They've gone all in terms of, Brent, we're going to give you every piece possible to fix the offense, and we're even going to allow you to bring Kevin Wilson in so that you've got a game day offensive bridge between you and Arbuckle in terms of keeping everything going, right? So they've pushed it all in, call the defense, and we've done everything we can to make the offense better. So, it doesn't have to be Baker Mayfield and Kyler putting up 50 goddamn points every game, right? If OU averages,
that's the thing is everybody's acting like they have to go out there and score 50 every fucking week.
No one. There's not an SEC. There's not a SEC team we're going to play that could put up 49 points on our offense unless we're just special team mistakes, fumbling, and interceptions, and doing all kinds of stupid shit like that. Nobody has the firepower to do that.
And listen, they're not just going to fire him at the expense of this roster that they've invested so much money in, and the coaching staff that they've invested so much money in. If they go out there and go 7-5, and they've got a bunch of tight games, like what Mr. Mason just said, Sooner Cowboys, this is to think that you're going to help yourself by firing the guy. It won't, because how many guys are walking right out the door, and that you got 2 good years of a defense, and we're going to go ahead and pull the plug on that, and then do what? Yeah,
I mean, again, just
it makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Product, and let's be honest, guys. If you think the defense is good this year, and you think the team's good this year, 2026, with a potential like Foji, Fasusi, offensive line, all the Elijah Thomas, all the running backs, and all the other stuff that they have. That the 26 team could be loaded on both sides of the ball in both trenches.
Dude, that is not a factual statement. Sooner Cowboys is not a fact.
We just don't know yet.
It's just not a factual statement. You don't even know how the season goes at 7-5. They could have 3 of those losses could be by a couple of points. That's not a factual statement. Yeah, it is just your opinion. That's the point.
Yeah, I mean, again, what does the 7-5 look like? Who are we playing? I mean,
they're not just going to pay the man $35 million to walk and watch you lose that entire
and 25 million for the assistants when you get up to it. So you've got to just wait and see how it all plays out. It's not just a hard number. 7-5 gets him fired. 8-4, he gets to stay. It's not that mechanic. It's just not that simple. There's much with our schedule. There's much more nuance to it, right? If you have injuries at key positions, that's a factor too, right? They're not excuse, but they can play a role. So let's just see how it plays out. But
rolling into the Red River Robbery game, you have a chance to do three things within leading up to Texas and after Texas.
Mm-hmm.
You have a chance with Michigan to make a statement.
Yep.
Make a light statement, because still you go out there and do your thing against Michigan. People are going to say still first year quarterback.
I don't know though. They're talking about Bryce Underwood like he walks on water.
Yeah, generational. We throw that word around a lot, as Nick would say, transcendent. But you have a chance to make a statement. Then you have a chance to make another statement 2 weeks later or a couple of weeks later against Auburn. Then you have a chance against Texas to go out there and send a message to the nation.
That's right.
So to be honest,
Auburn,
we have 2 midterms to take. We have a first half of the midterm, and we have a second half of the midterm, and then we get that first real test, in my opinion. So it's one of those things where, like Des Garnett in here, I think he's fair. Texas guy, I think he's fair with some of the stuff that he's saying.
Oh yeah,
as far as the defense that he likes, offense I have to see, and I get it. We can make all the excuses, but I think there are real excuses out there as far as just all the things that we were battling. I mean, a lot of people don't realize the internal struggles that were going on as far as who the hell is playing, why are these people playing? Offensive coordinator not necessarily, honestly, taking the time to try to develop his young quarterback or trying to make a game plan like you saw in the latter half of the season last year for Jackson. No QB coach. You could talk about that, but I mean, when we really get to the nitty gritty, your top 5 receivers are pretty much injured the entire way. And your best wide receiver becomes, Hester by default. Then, after that, it's probably Jacob Jordan, who I think is going to have a really good year, who could potentially have a good year. He can stick himself into that rotation and be a staple. But after that, it was Barrett Sharp. The offensive line was tore up. I mean, it's so many things that happened last year that it's hard to sit here and say, oh, I have questions about OU's offense, because you're just like, I don't know how they could be any worse than what they were last year. But when you go and watch this Arbuckle offense, you think it's very Lincoln Riley-esque, but there's 2 differences. One, I think that he's more decisive with his calling as far as trying to be physical on certain plays. He doesn't get too over the hill with trying to be, finesse an awful lot. There is physicality out there. There's a physical element to this offense. But second off, you never leave, the film study when you're watching the Arbuckle offense thinking, okay, on this drive, I think he passed too much, or on this drive, I think he did this. No, what you leave the film study thinking is like, damn, he did a lot. He did more with less. And that's not to take anything away from Kyle Williams, Meredith, things like that. But you saw Mateer make a lot of things happen. People say, I had an OU fan today telling me, last year Jackson with that makeshift offensive line, what do you think that, Mateer is going to be? I'm like, hell, you haven't watched the Washington State film, because obviously you would see.
Yeah, he's having an O-line there.
Yeah, I mean, it was times where Mateer looked like Johnny Manziel out there just trying to, keep the play alive and making things happen. But I don't necessarily think that he's going to have to use his legs an awful lot this year. I think you're going to be fine. But if you put on the film and you don't just stare at Mateer, but you actually look at what's going on, it's a very friendly offense that has very physical and a lot of physicality going on out there, especially the trenches. And you see an offensive play caller that truly adapts to the game. And to me, that's something that we haven't had in a while. Granted, Levy had some really good offenses, but still the ability to adapt to what's going on in the game, that has been something that's been lacking. So it's just one of those things where I think the sky could be the limit for this OU team. Obviously, they have to go prove it. There are some hurdles that we have to jump over on and off the field, especially off the field. Making sure we stay injury free and all the rest of that. But this could be
added 2 new pieces already to that training staff too. In that medical team, which is something that we've been talking a lot about.
And to be honest with you, Joe C and company, they're going all in with or without BV as the coach for the next year. I mean, that's what it is. OU is setting up the building blocks to try to do something special here in Norman within the next few years. And you see it happening, and whether BV is a coach or not, you can't deny what's going on in Norman right now.
So Little Coop says, the defensive talent he'll play against is on another level again than the Pac-12. So let's just repeat this because I said it last week. But so the Arkansas quarterback, is it Green? Is that right?
Yeah, Taylor Green.
And Pavia, their SEC stats are the same stats and QB
that in New
metrics.
Mexico State and Boise State?
Yeah. They're the same stats they had at New Mexico and Boise. They're performing at the exact same level. They didn't drop off some cliff. So,
why is it that we think that Arch is going to just come in and be God though?
Exactly. So where's the confirmation bias going on here?
Come on, bro. Come on.
Everyone says, Mateer's going to drop off. Well, if he only has like 4,000 yards of offense and only, what do you have, like 50 TDs last year?
I think 44.
So he only has 34 TDs again. If he has 4,000 yards of total offense and 34 TDs for OU, if you told me you told me Mateer had those stats, I would tell you OU is at worst 8-4. Right? John Mateer has 4,000 yards of total offense, 34 touchdowns. I would say
they're going to the playoff.
OU's around 8-4, maybe better, based upon
if
how
he's got 3,500 and 35 touchdowns, they're going to the playoff. They're winning 10 games if he does that.
Right. So
with this defense, come on.
Yeah. So but everyone's all like, "Oh, his stats are going to plummet." I'm like,
it's not even factual. And the thing was,
but it's not in reality. Pavia and Green didn't.
None of it is steeped in reality. It's all bullshit.
And Pavia and Green are playing for fucking Arkansas and Vandy. I mean, I know we've dropped off a little bit, but we have a lot more talent on our roster on offense than either of those teams.
I mean, honestly, if you're going to sit there and tell me that you know for sure that the guy that had 44 touchdowns last year is not going to be anywhere close to that good, but you know for sure that the guy that couldn't beat out the 7th round draft pick is going to be, you're going to have to make it make sense. You're going to have to make it make sense.
Yeah, just wait, let Arch play 4 games and then get back to us. That's all.
I think Arch is going to be really good. But I don't think that that's the only thing that has to be really good. I think a lot of things have to go their way. A lot of things have to go their way.
I mean, there's a strong chance they roll into Dallas with 2 losses.
Yeah, I mean, would it surprise you if look, and Oklahoma gets they get a week to really prep while they're on the road at the Swamp against one of the other better teams in the SEC. At least roster-wise. And
hype-wise, I mean, everyone thinks DJ Lagway is going to dominate.
It's not even that. That defensive line they're going to face in that game is going to be a monster, too, with their new offensive line.
Yeah, and it's not like Texas is a road killer either, right? I mean, you didn't leave in the Big 12. You never left the state of Texas, barely. And last
They
year,
didn't leave the state of Texas there last year.
I don't think they did.
They did
and
not.
last year, Texas's road schedule was quiche. It was badly seasoned.
They went to Vandy. They went to Vandy and
like Kentucky, I think.
Mississippi State, I think.
Yeah, I mean their only big road game was in College Station inside the state of Texas.
That's it. Another Texas game. Yeah, right up the road. Up the road.
Right down the road. With the dog lovers. So again,
at Nashville, big deal.
Ooh, in a stadium that's like being half rebuilt, they have 30,000 fans in there. I mean it's.
David Keith Williams. I got a suggestion for you. Answer the questions that I asked you back whenever you made a comment. I asked you a question. You haven't answered.
All right. So David, I saw your comment. So you said that you don't think OU's recruiting well enough in 2026.
It was bad. Yeah.
Okay. So essentially, Jaden Jackson and David Stone are going to be your starting defensive tackles in 2026. PJ could come back. Taylor Wine, Danny Okoye. Did you watch the basketball montage this week?
They have to come back. The
guy in the black shirt doing the tomahawk dunks is CJ Nixon, and he looks unreal. And then at linebacker, everyone seems to forget Kip Lewis, Sam O, and Kobe can come back next year if they want to. And OU's going to have 3 other young linebackers who've now been in the system for 3 years. James Nestor was a top 250 recruit. Marcus James is the other guy dunking the ball all over the place in that highlight reel. And he's 6'4", 235, and everyone says he looks unreal. So that's another year for him to develop. And then the secondary could be Gentry Williams and Eli Bowen again, and Peyton Bowen and Boganowski. I just ran through a defense that could easily be a top 20 defense again. And then on offense, you're either bringing back John Mateer or you're going to have third-year Michael Hawkins at quarterback. Running backs, it could be the year Tory Blaylock and Tatum blow up, just 2 top 100 talents at running back. You can have an offensive line that's Howland, Fasusi, Makala, EPL, and Foji.
Nigel.
And you've got Nigel Smith to add to the mix.
Yep.
It's
they're not going to be hurting for talent. There's not.
So that's
David Hicks is completely. There is no David Hicks is not at Oklahoma. First off, but if you're talking about Stoney, yes. If you don't, you think that he was just leaving that all that stuff was because he wasn't dedicated to this program? Did you pay attention to any of that stuff?
He just dominated spring. He'd worked all spring to be the best player possible. David Stone, I'm not worried about David Stone on the field. That's irrelevant. He's going to be what he is, and he's trending to be.
Who cares about 26 though? Is right. I'll give you that on that one. I don't understand why we're talking about 26 yet. We need to talk about right now. If they make a run at the playoff, even if they come up short of the playoff, you think all these guys are splitting? Because I don't see it.
I'm a recruiting guy. I can talk about 2027 if I want to.
No, I get it.
But yeah, I mean, but the 26 roster could be stacked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone's like, well,
they're loaded. It's just because they don't end up with a bunch of 5-star guys because they don't care about chasing those guys in the same way that others do. They don't look. It is what it is. I'll tell you this much: Clemson didn't start getting a bunch of 5-star dudes until after they won their first natty. Just so you understand that.
Yeah,
it didn't mean that the players weren't that good. It means that they didn't start attracting the guys that ended up with the 5-stars.
Yeah, I mean, it's OU is going to recruit enough good players in this recruiting class that they can develop, and in certain parts of the roster, they could be additions. Like Davion Gross, if OU gets him, he could be part of the wide receiver core instantly. Okay? If they get Jake Krull at defensive end, they'll have a hard time keeping him off the field. Do they need it? But they get to the point at some positions like D-line where we don't need a 5-star freshman to blow up and start.
Bro,
We've got
and
talent.
nobody even talks about Trent. He looks like he's 50 right now.
Yeah.
40-year-old truck driver coming in as a true freshman. He might end up playing too. And David, I'm sure you're sure that we don't think OU has a reasonable chance to reach the playoffs in 25. I think that's absolutely wrong. I think that if they get to 9-3, they've got a damn good chance of being in the playoffs. And I think most of us are expecting them to get to 9-3.
Yeah, I mean, who thought Arizona
Clemson
State
was not an
gonna...
anomaly. You know what? It was that they got the guys, and then they got credit for that they knew what they were doing. Benji, God damn, it's like talking to walls around here, bro.
No,
It's like talking to walls.
it definitely is. It definitely is.
I'm out, man. I gotta get anyways though. We've been going for
Texas fans go crazy.
I need to bounce too, so let's just wrap it.
All right, guys. Look, you got all of that. Got the recruiting at the first. We talked about the schedule, the times. We talked about front office moves, and we had some spit spats and some words for the gargulers. The Texas fans. So, with that being said, we'll catch you next time.